The previous basket is under review.
Welcome back to Stats by Will and Jim, a college basketball podcast that focuses on the numbers, and we are focusing specifically on the numbers of the ACC today. We are starting some previews, the power conferences, going with the ACC. It's ACC week at Basket Under Review. You're getting our numbers that will shape the season episode here, and you can also go over to the Basket Under Review podcast, The Burp, and listen to Eamon Brennan with Brian Geisinger. Will, I intentionally did not listen to that episode because I wanted to come in with a fresh mind, fresh thought process here, not be influenced by two very smart people. Did you listen to it, or are you kind of trying to preserve the same fresh mind as we enter this ACC preview?
I heard about 20 minutes of it while I was out yesterday getting lunch.
Okay.
But it was just about Brian's background. So I don't think it's going to be super informative for figuring out like Pittsburgh's 3-point percentage or something.
Perfect. Okay. Yes. The premise here, the construct, is we're going team by team in the order of Will's standings. So conduct and send all feedback towards Mr. Warren here. But team by team, we've each got 9 of the squads, and it's going to be the number that will shape the season. The most important statistic that we think will set up how the year goes for that team, whether it's a high floor, low ceiling team, or one with a big range of variance, whether it's a good team, a bad team. We're going to look at every squad through that lens. Before we do, though, a shout out to Basket Under Review. We mentioned the Burp already. That podcast with Eamon and a guest every single week comes out Monday mornings. Make sure to check that out. We've also got everything behind the paywall, the $10 a month, the Discord, the writing on the website. We do release a few previews and pieces for free there, but I would jump on it and get all into the premium content because it's as good as it gets. All of Jordan Majeski's writing about coaching styles, Brian Ralph's weekly articles, Will's incredible weekly articles. He just came out with one called Corn Math about Iowa. It was a delight. It had a great graphic. Shout out to our team behind the scenes there. But yes, Basket Under Review, it's the best community of college hoops fans on the internet. Highly encourage joining that, getting all the content and soaking it all in with hoops less than 6 weeks away. I believe I have my math correct there.
Yeah, I think, what is it, 41 days when we're recording this?
Yes, indeed.
And under that for these quote unquote exhibitions.
Yeah, I saw somebody in the Discord say my alma mater, Mizzou, is playing Marquette on October 9th, which feels aggressively early. I just hope we avoid the Jonte Porter torn ACL, knock on wood, of that particular scrimmage. It has happened in the past. So let's just everybody stay healthy, have fun, and drink Capri Suns afterwards. That's my goal for that.
Orange slices at halftime.
Exactly. Okay, so we've got the ACC preview coming, which means the stat of the day had to be ACC related. And I won't do the same one for every preview, but will the question for the day, Duke had 5 of the top 7 players in the ACC per Evan Mia last year and 7 of the top 12. Can you name the top 3 non-Duke players in the ACC per Evan Mia? Minimum of 500 possessions, I will say. This as a hint. 2 of the top 3 feel very gettable to me. The third one, I really am not going to hold you to, and I'll let you rapid fire guesses if you want, or I can just sort of give that one away. But I'm hoping you can get 2 of the 3.
Okay, so they probably had to be on pretty good teams. I'm going to guess Chucky Hepburn is one.
That was the number 4 player, the top-ranked non-Duke player, per Evan Mia. Well done.
RJ Davis, maybe?
Ding. The other top 5 player.
He was a tad disappointing last year, but I mean, still quite good.
Yep,
so
highly productive for a team that made the tournament. Yeah, how about that? Yeah. The heels.
The other one I would have guessed here is Maxime Reynaud, but his team was not good enough, I'm guessing, to get up there.
That would be correct. The next 3 all come from the same team, which has not been mentioned yet on this podcast, but was good in the ACC.
SMU?
Not SMU.
Or Clemson, probably.
Yes, indeed. Clemson is the other one. Victor Locken, 8. Ian Shefflin, 9. Jaden Zachary, 11. So you've got
Chase Hunter?
No Chase Hunter. Very surprising.
That is weird.
Yes. There's some weird, funky on-off stuff with the Clemson Hunters, where Dylan Hunter is like a supernova player whenever he was on the floor last year. I think there's some noise there. We'll find out this coming season with Dylan Hunter probably taking over the lead point guard role for the Tigers, but we'll discuss Clemson more in detail. That was the stat of the day. But before we talk teams, before we go through our ACC preview, a quick shout out to Home Field, the sponsor of this podcast and a sponsor at Basket Under Review. Home Field Apparel is the best place to get your college sports apparel for the upcoming season, both college hoops and the active college football season right now. All kinds of unique logo designs, some retro ones for probably your school, almost certainly your school, and definitely a school you can have fun cheering for. If it's Colorado School of Mines or Slippery Rock or whoever it is that you feel like buying gear for, it's all super comfortable. They've got t-shirts, joggers, sweatshirts, jackets. I know a couple of my Mizzou compatriots have purchased the Mizzou jacket, and it is sharp in person. So make sure to check that out as well. They've got football boxes for some of the top teams. And with all that, you can get 15% off of your first purchase with the promo code BURNER15. That is BURNER15 for 15% off your first purchase. Home Field Apparel, wear one for the team. All right, we've got 18 ACC teams to get through here. Well, it's not just a Burner 15. It is a Burner 18. We decided to alternate based on your standings. I have the stat for the odd numbered teams. You have the even numbered teams. People can find out. Maybe they can check the description and the order of the teams, but otherwise it will be a reveal if they don't feel like spoiling it. There's no real surprise at number 1, though, Mr. Warren. It is Duke, and I will go first with my stat that will dictate the season. And this wasn't really I didn't know how to frame this. I almost went specific on like a points per game number, but generally what I went with is the scoring distribution. Basically, I'm confident Cam Boozer will be the number 1 player on this team, the number 1 scorer. But I think the best version of Duke is a more democratic offensive distribution with some guys having big games night to night, playing really different lineups where, okay, certain matchups, we can go heavy defense, we can go bigger, we can go heavy 3-point shooting. That puts a little bit on John Shire, but if it's like Isaiah Evans is second in scoring at 11, and then it's a bunch of guys at 8 and 9, that actually kind of sounds great to me behind Cam Boozer. What do you think of that as the top stat for Duke this year?
I think it's intriguing. So last year in conference play, Flag obviously led the team with 21, but you had Knippel at 14.7, Tyrese Proctor 12.4, Sion James 8.8, Malawak 7.5. Some sort of split like that is probably going to be hard to attain a second time because, Duke may well have, 2 top 4 picks on this team again. But the depth of last year's team feels like it was a tad bit better. I think that because I don't think Cam Boozer's probably going to score 21 a game in conference, but let's say he gets 18 or so. The thing I would look for here, can Duke have 4 double-digit per game scorers in conference play? I think if you have that, that makes them even harder to guard than usual.
Yep, and it's just the flexibility. I'm really excited to see. Like, I don't know if Dame Sarr is quite ready to be a number 2 option on a national title caliber team, but I know he's going to be a great defender, athlete on the wing. And then you've got other options. Isaiah Evans was the mega microwave man last year, rising up into a bigger role. Caden Boozer, Caleb Foster at point guard, that little platoon. Curious how that goes. There's no true Sion James level veteran kind of steadying this team, the 5th-year guy. Malik Brown, Caleb Foster, I don't view them in that lens, although they can be impactful players. But it is a test for John Shire. And as noted in the Discord today, this is Tuesday that we're recording this, they did bring in Evan Brads, an assistant who used to play at Belmont, to kind of boost the offense, which is surprising because they were the number 1 Ken Pom offense in the country last year. And that efficiency certainly helped them rack up a ton of points, as did the ACC being very bad. But Duke, they've got a lot of options, flexibility, and a really high upside. It is no surprise that they're number 1 here. I fully agreed with that selection, Mr. Warren.
Now, I'm thinking the offense thing perhaps is more late game, because the criticism on Shire at this point is that he's figured out like the first 38 minutes of games. But, those clutch moments, you think of the Clemson ending last year, the Houston ending last year, not exactly the most creative offense you've seen in your life. So I kind of wonder if perhaps that is what they're going for, to maybe space it out a bit more. Like last year's Duke team in clutch moments was extremely downhill driven as compared to the rest of the game where they're, very perimeter oriented. I think almost 50% of their shots were from deep in conference play. Um, I wonder if that might be the reason for that. It'd be kind of odd to use an assistant spot on functionally a 2 minute a game job, but I mean, if it works, it works. And he does give me very fond memories of peak Rick Bird. So
Yes.
who could say no to that?
Absolutely not me. Yeah, I love thinking about those prime Belmont offenses. Yeah, Duke didn't play a lot of close games last year, and the ones that they did where they were down late, it felt like they came up a little short. I wouldn't say that they got a bad look in the Houston game at the Final Four. A kind of half fade for Cooper Flag over a good defender, but not a like a giant. It wasn't Tugler. It was Jalen Roberts, and it just didn't go. But some of the turnovers they had in Kentucky, Kansas, Clemson certainly would hope for something better this year from Shire. As Will said, he mastered the first 38 minutes. There were some beautiful offensive sets out of this team last year, and I think they can do that again with the talent that they have.
A big key for them is just the strength of this conference because last year they did actually play a very stout non-conference slate. You recall the Kansas game, the Kentucky game, Illinois in February. This year is going to be much the same.
Auburn, even
Auburn
last
too,
year.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, like Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Florida, MSU, Texas Tech are all on this slate. I keep forgetting they play Michigan in the middle of February. I mean, that's a stout group. I don't care that the other 6 or so games are all kind of tomato cans, but like that's fine when the top 7 on this slate are that strong. So they're going to be well tested. I think it's just again a matter of can the rest of the ACC step up to meet them.
Yep. It's basically become a not quite in this extreme, but when the WCC was really down for Gonzaga and Mark Few was like, I have to play an insane non-conference slate to really prepare my team, set up the SOS numbers. I think Shire knows that the ACC has taken on some water and has really gone out and scheduled a lot tougher in the non-con. Some home and homes, some really good neutral site games. I think the neutral site ones were a characteristic of the Coach K teams, but home and home has been really fun to see Duke step into.
I
All right,
think
let's go to
a good thing for them, really quick. They close super strong. I don't know if you've seen their schedule: home Virginia, road NC State, home UNC to close out the season. So I think that'll have them on a good, tournament ready track.
Yep, very much so. All right, let's go to number 2, Will. For you in your standings, it was Louisville, the Cardinals, who we have been kind of the pep rally, the parade band for talking up the Cardinals recently. What is the crucial number for you for Louisville this year?
I think we got to go to a Louisville game this year. It's not that far from you, and it's definitely not that far from me. Um, I had a few I could have picked from, but I went with the most surprising one, and one I just genuinely did not expect based on watching them play. Did you know they only generated 6.9 fast break points per game last year?
That stuns me because what we've talked about McNeely not getting as many or getting way more transition threes in this offense than he did at Virginia, but only less than 7 fast break points. Interesting.
Yeah, and so when they touched 8 or more, they were 11-1. The only loss being the Creighton game. They only got 8.8% of their points in the fast break last year, which is obviously not a problem when you were as efficient as they were offensively. I mean, 57% from 2. But Kelsey's Charleston teams averaged 11 fast break points a game. And while that's not going to sound like a huge step up, that will get you into the 80th percentile or higher most years. And we've talked about how Louisville is a better team when they played faster. They're able to dictate the pace of the game more often. I just think with the offensive power they have, I would be really disappointed to see them not at least touch 10 on a nightly basis. And I know that fast break and transition points can be, calculated a little differently from site to site, but at CBB Analytics, seeing them that low is genuinely shocking. And I think maybe I had forgotten that last year they generated a lot of offense in 10 to 15 seconds into the shot clock, not 5 to 10. So if they can move that up a bit, get those more open looks in transition, kind of play a more Oates style ball in a way where they're really hunting those first 10 seconds. And I think, forcing more turnovers will help that. I don't expect that to be much of an issue this year. I think they're going to be able to push the pace a bit more, and just overload opponents, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, there were times those Kelsey Charleston teams. The 2022 team was top 5 in the country in tempo. And looking at it last year, Louisville only 123rd in transition frequency per synergy. So, I mean, that kind of speaks to your point of they weren't quite as breakneck, run it down your throat as it felt and as I thought maybe they would be. I know their depth struggled a little bit after Pryor went down with the injury and Corin Johnson was out for the season. This year feels like they've got a little more of that. Perhaps that allows Kelsey to crank the tempo. But yeah, we keep singing the praises of this offense and how elite it can be. I think the more transition possessions they get for that, the better. That makes a lot of sense. So I like that choice. That choice.
And Kelsey's peak Charleston team, the 31 win group, 95th percentile in transition usage. So I think, honestly, I would like to see that from Louisville this year. Let's dial up the pace a bit.
I think Michael Brown Jr. is on board with that as well. So you got the freshman who wants to play fast and the coach who should let him. I think it would make a lot of sense. All right, next up, number 3 in your standings. Back to me, NC State. Will Wade taking over, headed to Raleigh. The stat I decided here has felt very broad, but for this team, I'm okay with that. I went with just overall offensive rating because this feels like the Will Wade team, his last LSU team, where it was a top 10 defense with Arsenault, with Holloman. Darian Williams grades out as a fantastic defender. I think they can be elite defensively. They can force some turnovers. Quadir Copeland is a weapon in that regard. But how will they score? How efficiently will they score? That is a question for me. I don't know if it's going to be just off of turnovers. Can the half-court offense be efficient? There's some real swing factors here. Like Darian Williams is a post-up fulcrum. Excited to see him in that role. The Paul McNeil breakout that you forecasted on our breakout episode, that's a big part of it. Matt Abel, how ready is he to be a scorer in the ACC? There's a lot of chatter about him as maybe an underrated freshman. Alan Breed has been a big-time scorer for Wade in very brief stints, and I know he talked him up last summer in our AMA with Will Wade. There's just a lot of up and down or kind of variance, I think, in their offense, which I don't feel about their defense, and that really, I think, dictates their ceiling and their floor this year.
Absolutely. So last year, and obviously, competition is going to require some caveats here. But last year at McNeese, undefeated when they had an offensive rating of 106 per 100 possessions or better. I think it was 19-0. The other thing I look for them is game state. Like, how well do they control game state? Because last year at McNeese, 17 different times they led the game 30 plus minutes. I don't think that's going to happen at NC State because it's a tougher schedule and relative to conference, you're worse. But Will Wade has had this thing in the past where his teams are, they don't get the credit that a Houston does, but they are quite good at crock-potting, where they never really have this giant lead, but it's just like it consistently levels up a little bit every 5 minutes.
And the way they were able to do it to the Southland, I think, is telling. But yeah, can you manage that back in the ACC? Another thing I'm looking at with Will Wade's history is in the power conferences and with VCU, he's kind of a consistent top 100 tempo guy. And McNeese, he with a little less depth, was down in the 270s both seasons. Does he try to ramp that up? I know he's got mobile bigs. Van Allen Lubin can move around. It's not like a lumbering center type. Do they play a little faster with more talent and at a higher level? Potentially. They were great at slowing down fast teams last year against Alabama in the early season. They held them to 67 possessions, which Nate Oates was probably not pleased with. It was the lowest total or the lowest possession count that Alabama played all season. So that tells you what McNeese was able to do there. And if they do play slow, can the half-court offense execute? Again, no real major questions about their defense. I think that's going to work. It's just, is this going to be an offense that gets them up into the top 20, like I see as a potential ceiling outcome for them, or is it going to keep them in the 30-ish range as an NCAA tournament team, but maybe not quite the highest upside? Okay, we head to number 4, the Tar Heels of North Carolina. Hubert Davis in a pivotal season. Will, what's gonna tell the story of the Heels year this year?
All right. First off, I have a petition. Can I count COVID year Roy as functionally a Hubert year?
Sure. I say yes. Let's do it.
Yeah, because it didn't seem like they were all there, to be honest. So if you let me do that, I'm looking at 3-point percentage. So COVID to now, 5 seasons, UNC 64-14 when shooting 35% or better from 3. The problem, there are 68 games where they haven't shot 35% or better from 3. They're 37-31 in those games. And I do like some of the shooting talent at hand here. We've talked about the build being kind of weird for its for what they paid for it. But like Kean Evans, very good shooter in the Medved system. Jonathan Powell, pretty good at it as well. Jaren Stevenson has always flashed. I'd like for him to be a bit more efficient from deep as a big man, but he and Vesar add a bit of a dimension that UNC hasn't really had from their front court in recent seasons. And I will say, I'm too stupid to give up on Jaden Young coming in from Virginia Tech. He might not play a big role here, but like he can shoot. Career 84% from the line. I'd like to see him in a system with more spacing, which this should have. I just want to see this team be efficient from 3, because that seems to be when Hubert is at his best, when the project works at its best. And given that UNC doesn't really hammer the boards like they used to under Roy, that requires a bit more efficient 3-point shooting, which does work when they really don't turn the ball over, which is nice. They are more perimeter oriented than they ever were under Roy. So I just got to see some shots go in.
It's interesting with the turnover thing because they had Elliot Cadeau, who is, I think people cast aspersions on him as a turnover prone point guard, but he's going 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio, and he's responsible for most of the playmaking, which takes that burden off everybody else. Yes, there's not a lot of turnovers happening. Another name worth mentioning here is Luka Bogovac, the international edition. Took 169 threes in his last international season, made 41% of them. That is a really nice addition to have. He played in the ABA, which is a very competitive league. Maybe not the best league in Europe, but Brad Underwood certainly finds it competitive and brings players from it constantly over to Illinois. So I think he should be a solid piece. He's an older player. He's 22. Get him a little experience. I don't know. I'm curious about the front court guys. Like Stevenson, I thought maybe I always got too green of a light at Alabama because Nate Oates just wanted to give everybody that green light. And I'm scarred from watching. I think Jaden Young went 0 for 11 from 3 in the ACC tournament. And that like convinced me that he couldn't throw it in the ocean. But there is something to be said for a change of scenery for both of those guys. Hubert does do a pretty good job of instilling confidence in his players, I think. Maybe there's a little bit of roll the balls out to that, but I think they play with a little bit of confidence and abandon that helps. So the shooters here, I like Kean Evans, as you mentioned, and it does really dictate whether they're going to win or lose. So I see it with the Heels.
And for the shit Hubert does get, I think correctly so, pre-tournament ratings wise, he does have 3 top 20 offenses. I think that offensively he does generally know what he's doing and has something that works. But again, like we got to see shots go down.
Yep. And how do they get those shots without Cadeau making all the plays and being the true creator? Is it going to be Caleb Wilson as like the front court fulcrum? It's going to be a lot of pick and roll with Evans, who's not a true like PNR point guard, and him and Vesar.
Do you want Trimble running point, really? I don't know that I
do.
Not
really. I think he can be a great scorer off the ball, attacking closeouts and stuff, but I don't know if I want him as primary ball handler. It should probably be by committee and playing as much in transition as possible, which was another strength of the Roy teams. That's probably what they need to do there.
There is like a really funny path to Hubert running a Princeton system with us that makes sense. Like a 5-out deal where it's just like, yeah, Wilson is point forward, or even Vesar up top in the high post. Yep. That actually would probably work better than what they will do. So I'm interested to see the push and pull.
Yeah, I can't like in good conscience say, Hubert, come on, run Princeton. But it would be fun to watch with this group where you decentralize the playmaking, put it in the front court, spread things out a lot more. Yeah, I like that idea, but I don't know if Mr. Davis and Mr. Doherty and the entire staff are going to go for that. Okay, number 5 in Will's standings, Virginia. And for me, the key here, just looking at the roster and looking at Odom's history, is points in the paint. At VCU, Odom's teams really kind of struggled there. They were 11th in the A10 last year, scoring 30 a game, 41st percentile nationally. In 2024, they were 13th in the A10, scoring 29 per game, 28th percentile nationally. But its Utah State teams were brilliant at this. Number 2 in the Mountain West, number 1 in the Mountain West, 68th percentile and 82nd percentile nationally. This roster has shooting. I know that. I can look at the perimeter guys and see a bunch of bombers. Even the front court has a lot of skill with the international dudes. But can they get into the paint? Can they create some easy shots to avoid droughts where if the shots aren't falling, what's the alternative? Can DeRitter be a mismatch in the mid post? Can Grundlow give them a little post scoring? Can Malik Thomas get to the free throw line the way he did in the WCC? There's some questions here on getting actual easier looks, getting inside, that I think maybe can get overlooked with the sparkling shooting talent. And I'm curious if they're able to actually get some of those easier baskets inside, Will.
Yeah, so 23-4 at VCU when scoring 32 or more points in the paint. And given that the national average is 30 a game, I think that's a pretty good target to aim for. If you can get to 30 plus, you're going to be in business. And this is not just against, A10 slop, or actually a game on here I attended against Loyola Maryland. No offense to Loyola Maryland. But like they did it against Penn State 2 years ago. They've done it against some pretty darn good Loyola defenses. It's a system that works. We mentioned, I think, in one of our previous podcasts, that this is going to be like going from classical music to seeing the Rolling Stones, like for Virginia fans. And not that either of those are bad in a vacuum or amazing in a vacuum. It's just going to be a very different experience. And the fact that VCU played hyper fast, like in the fast break last year, they were pretty darn good at hunting on the primary break. I think that will aid with paint points just off of turnovers, off of some of that perimeter aggression. I don't think that they can run, quote unquote havoc, which they didn't, but it was a modified form of it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how he sort of gels his two sides here, because he's been pretty amenable to wherever he's been working with the talent and working with previous systems, trying to meld his own ideas. So do we see some Bennett-ish stuff? Like, does Packline still work here? Do we see a bit more of an extended press? There's a lot of cool questions at hand here with UVA.
Yeah, he's very much high on the 3-point attempt rate is always going to be high. And those Utah State teams that were awesome in the paint actually were really 5-out-ish, like Brandon Horvath, Justin Bean. That spacing is actually what let them get so many points in the paint. It's not like they had some post-up threat. Like, this isn't a great Osabor Utah State team where they're pounding it inside to them. It's that the floor was so open, the guards could get inside or they could attack mismatches, play 4 out, 1 in if they wanted to a little bit with Bean scoring in the post. This roster feels closer to that than it does to VCU, where you've got Christian Furman or Luke Bamgoy, just kind of a non-shooter that has to sit in the dunker spot or set screens to be out of the way. There's more skill with this front court, unless Onyenso is on the floor. Unfortunately, he's more lob threat, true. But if it's Grundlow, if it's DeRitter in the front court, you've got skill and you can space it. And hopefully they can take advantage of that. Thomas is supposed to be the downhill guy who's a really high free throw rate player at San Francisco. And I think he fits that trend here as well.
I would have them on a 2022-2023 Utah State watch, as in having the exact same rankings: 16th offense, 70th defense.
I love that. 28th overall. I think that would all be reasonable for anybody to look at, both from a Virginia insider perspective or an outsider, just looking at that roster. All right, number 6 in the ACC, and I will mention we are trying to spend some good time on these good teams. We're not going to be this kind to Georgia Tech and Boston College. Sorry, it's just the case. Number 6, Will, is Miami, Florida for you.
This is a rare one where I went with a player. I think that one specific guy is going to really tell the story of this season, because I think if they're smart, they're going to build around him. It's Malik Reneau. Indiana last year, not a good basketball team. I think we should note that. Not that their fans need a reminder. My number here is 13. And it's because Indiana went 13-4 last year when Malik scored 13 or more points. When he didn't, they were 6-9. I think Miami's offensive upside is going to lean pretty heavily on Renault getting his, because the rest of the offense doesn't make a ton of sense to me. This is a rare Torvik mega disagreement for me, where Torvik's really down on the defense but high in the offense. I feel the total opposite. I'm quite high in the defensive upside here with Uday, with Renault, with True Washington out in the backcourt. Like, that's really fun. I don't see it with the offense. I think it's a really poor fitting offense in general. Like, Trey Donaldson can go and get his, as we saw at Michigan last year, but like, you don't really come to True Washington for the offensive upside. You don't come to Uday for the offensive upside either. I think the offensive fit here is just quite poor. Like, the two best front court pieces, like Renault and Uday, kind of, I mean, they don't do the same thing, but it's going to be like two largely non perimeter shooters. Spacing's going to be constricted. So I think they're going to be very reliant on Malik to bail them out a lot of nights. Like, he's going to have to go in, save some late possessions, him and Donaldson. So I look towards that for, like, can Miami get enough from him night over night over night consistently? Because consistently was a concern in Indiana. If they can get that, I'm better on the offense. But if not, I think we are looking at an IT team.
Yeah, the offense is a real big question mark. You look at some of these transfer-heavy teams and you see all the production, and you're like, "Oh, is there going to be enough balls to go around, enough shots to go around?" It's not the case with Miami. Like, they've got sub 20% usage guys. Like, Uday is like 14% usage, and True Washington and Trey Donaldson are both lower usage guards, or they were last year. Renault's the only guy that has functionally been like a key centerpiece of an offensive attack. They need him to be that here. And I like some of his passing, that when he was playing with Khalil Ware, was a really good lob thrower to him. And I think they had some good big to big passing. And I think he can probably have that with Uday, another athletic finisher around the rim. But yeah, that he needs to be the fulcrum, because even the freshmen, while I like some of the pieces coming in, I'm a big Dante Allen fan, in particular. He's not going to be a hand the ball to him and let him run offense. Donaldson and Washington are going to be a little more deferential. So it needs to be Renault as the centerpiece for a team that, yeah, I agree. Defensive upside, very strong. I think they're going to play hard. It's just, is it going to look sloppy, or is it going to be, a decent orchestra around somebody like Renault? It's an open question.
It's just not a coincidence to me that when they were making their late surge to the tournament last year, he was playing very well. 19 against MSU, 15 and 6 against Purdue, 22 against Washington, 16 against Ohio State on senior day. Like, when they finally reoriented everything around him down the stretch, it felt like Indiana cracked the code a little bit.
Yeah, and he can be maddening. I'm sure Indiana fans will nod at that, where, like, it's on defense and he'll just like see a light in the sky and wander towards it instead of guarding his man. But I do think he is a very skilled basketball player, and can show that this year. We've said a couple times we like guys getting out of the Woodson system to just find out what they look like elsewhere, and Renault could be a guy that benefits from that. All right, number 7, SMU, the Andy Enfield squad that lived in the Enfield zone last year, 45th to 55th in KenPom. That's what we have said at the three-man weave quite a bit. And hey, they landed exactly 50th last year. My big statistic for them is how they play against better competition. Last year, per Bart Torvik, against Q1 and Q2 teams, 6-10, 78th per Bart Torvik, 6-10 overall record, 78th per Bart Torvik. And then against Q3 and Q4, 18-1, 40th per Bart Torvik. They really ran it up on some of those lower teams. I think that influenced their overall ranking. The biggest difference, too, between those two, Will, they were 182nd in tempo against good teams, the Q1 and Q2, 58th against Q3 and Q4. They were like, all right, let's run. Let's just blow it out against these teams, win by 35 if we can, try to score 100, play in transition. And against better teams, they got bogged down, had to play in the half court, couldn't execute quite as well. They brought in an extra shooter in Jaron Pierre this year. They don't have Matt Cross anymore, though, who I think was pretty clearly their best player last year, and Evan Mia agreed. So can they play up against better competition, especially if the ACC is improved, or are they going to be kind of like this beat up on bad teams type of roster? That's my question for them.
And it's interesting to hear this because at USC, the Enfield sell was always that they were worse against
Yeah,
bad
yeah, it's a
teams.
great point.
So like the last couple of tournament teams you had there, 22 and 23, combined 9 and 12 against the top 50. Not bad at all. Like I had forgotten that in 2023 they smoked UCLA at home late in that season. Like beat them by 13, wasn't even that close. 2022 demolished San Diego State on a neutral floor, beat UCLA, beat Washington State on the road too. That was a good team. Like they played up against better competition. So I kind of wonder if we might see a return to form this year in that regard, where it could have been an athleticism thing. It could have just been, they weren't totally ready in year one. But I wouldn't be shocked if we see a bit of like the elder Anfield comeback, where they play up to competition. Like, what if they beat Duke this year? Would you really be that shocked? Like, yeah, maybe, but also not. Like, what if they beat Louisville? Wouldn't really be that surprising. But also, what if they lose to Georgia Tech? I mean, sue me, I wouldn't be shocked.
No,
It
no,
just
no.
wouldn't be like that. Actually, it would be pretty damn shocking because they don't play Georgia Tech because I'm stupid. But if they lost at home to Virginia Tech in mid-January, would that be shocking?
No, no, and last year, like I think they had that huge opportunity against Clemson coming to town when Clemson was shorthanded and SMU couldn't take advantage. I mean, Boopy Miller was also out, but yeah, it's just it was an interesting trend. I'm glad you brought that up. I kind of like had almost slipped my mind that those USC teams. It's like all right, they're talented. They're going to be really good when they play up, but they can fall asleep against bad teams. And maybe that tempo switch last year, playing much faster against bad teams, was to keep them focused, keep them engaged, and try to build those big leads. Curious what the trend will be this year between those two things.
Let me give you a perfect example of what could come this year as I am finally looking at the schedule. A truly peak week for them. So, January 13th, home Virginia Tech. Let's say that's a loss. 4 days later, home Virginia. That would be an amazing 1-1 week.
Yeah, the kind of like, all right, everybody's off the scent because they just lost at home to a worse team. Virginia's going to come to town and roll them. Nope. And then it's also if they're on the NCAA tournament bubble sometime, I mean, it's still mid-January at that point, but we're like, all right, they got a good win, but they also had the bad loss. It's
Poor Eamon is going to be tearing his hair out.
yes, the bubble watch will be maddening for this team. Yeah, you can even like, what if they beat Boston or beat Louisville at home on February 17th and lose at home to Boston College 5 days later? Just take the Q4 loss. Could be messy. All right, number 8, Will, is Clemson, and I dish it back to you. What is the number to watch for Clemson?
I had a couple of them here. I am actually going to swing it to one that I just realized belatedly. Did you know Clemson was 364th, as in like lowest in America, in defensive pace last year? So they forced the longest possessions in the entire country. And so this has been a pretty big staple of the Brownell era, and actually why. So I think people are warming to the idea of Shire as the top coach in the league. Let me submit Brad Brownell as number 2. I don't think he gets the respect he deserves, especially as a defensive mind. I'm really interested to see if they can run that back, force these low, long possessions, because the correlation there, they also force one of the most one-on-one heavy defenses in America, force a lot of late clock ISO possessions. They really annoyed Duke last year into that, I think we'll recall. Because the reason why I bring this up and why I switched from my original pick, which was 3-point percentage, I don't love the offensive fit here. I don't really see a ton of like offensive upside. Like maybe you're higher on Justin Porter than I am. I'm just not a massive fan of
I am
his at
not.
the P5 level. Like I think that could create too much reliance on Nick Davidson, who I do really like, but who I also think is probably not, you know, the guy you want being like your number one top dog. And really Clemson's been at their best when they've been more democratic in the past. I think leaning into the defensive side this year is going to be how they stay in tournament contention. And I just want to see, do they have the dogs to force these like, 20 plus second possessions? Can they, for like essentially like in the past, they haven't needed to force a ton of turnovers. Like you'll recall, the Elite Eight team actually had one of the lowest turnover rates in America on defense, but still forced these really long possessions that, a lot of tough twos forced, a lot of bad perimeter shots. I'm really looking towards that. Like, how well can they control pace on the defensive end?
It's been like you said, a huge trend for them. I will give a shout out to assistant Billy Donlin, typically well-regarded defensive coach. He had some good defensive teams at Kansas City, at Wright State. He was a really helpful defensive coach at Northwestern when he was there. And I think adding him to the staff in 2022 when he was let go at Kansas City has been super helpful to this too. Not that Brownell's ever been a bad defensive coach by any means, but it's just kind of like doubling down on a strength, having him on the staff. Now, does the personnel work for it? That's the question. You can see like the structure built similarly to last year, where Wallin is your 6'10" 3-man, as Chauncey Wiggins was last year. But Justin Porter, I have a real hard time picturing him defend at this level. There's a little less guard depth. There's still size, but yeah, it's going to have to be built on the framework of the scheme rather than like super standout individual pieces. And if they keep it slow, it's going to stay really sharp on that end. And I do trust Brownell and Donlin to have a pretty high floor on that end.
Number one in fast break points allowed last year, which is a bit of a surprise when Houston exists. But the other key stat here: 15-0 last season when allowing 3 or fewer fast break points.
Okay, that's pretty convincing. And 3 or fewer, I mean, that's really hard to do. I'm sure that we got a nice tug of war coming then, Will, for Clemson versus Louisville in games this year. Which one's going to be able to control the pace? Will Louisville be able to run, or will Clemson keep them in the half court? Something to watch this season. All right, number 9, Notre Dame. I went with 2-point percentage defense here, Will, because Micah Shrewsbury's first 3 teams as a coach were pretty solid at it, solid to even good. 29th, 127th, and 70th nationally. That fell off a cliff last year. 286th in the country in 2-point percentage defense. I generally believe the offense will be fine. They've got some scorers, some shooters. Last year, they were hurt by injuries in the perimeter. Like every guard missed at least 8 games. But an interior rotation of Keba Jai and Carson Tout from Northern Arizona is not this like stout shot blocking duo. But the scheme can work. Shrewsbury built a really solid 2-point defense at Penn State with Jai as a freshman and a bunch of shooters as really his team. Seth Lundy was like the multi-positional 4, but even he was more offensive based. So can they figure that out, get a better commitment to that end of the floor? They might still be a little bit young, but playing Jalen Harrelson as a big bodied 4, kind of like small ball type, that could work. They're just still small in the backcourt a little bit with Shrewsbury and Burton. I have some questions. Well, I kept wanting, and I keep wanting, to be high on a Notre Dame team with Shrewsbury in charge. But until they fix some of that leaky interior defense, I don't know if I can really do it.
Yeah, so last year 8-1 in games where they held opponents to below 50% hit rate on twos. But I think the clear problem there is that they only had 9 of those games.
Yes.
Like that can't happen if you're trying to make the tournament, or even if you're trying to contend in the ACC somewhat. The year before was quite a bit better, certainly, almost 20 games where they held opponents below 50%. They just didn't have the offense to go with it. But I agree with you. They're an intriguing team to me because I think you and I would agree their 2 best players are guards, Marcus Burton and Micah's son, Braden. Jalen Harrelson, I would hear out a potential argument as the number 2, as a more versatile forward. But the rim protection aspect of this is quite worrying. The defensive fit in general is a bit worrying with an undersized backcourt. I'm wondering how and where Shrewsbury can get creative with defensive coverages to maybe mask the rim protection aspect a bit, or also just mask kind of the smaller guards somewhat, but without having to overtax them defensively. It's a real tough push and pull there too.
Yeah, the confusing thing is with so much of the same personnel, the 2-point percentage defense got worse. Like they're 5th in minutes continuity last year in the country with Jai back, Tay Davis back, Burton, Shrewsbury. And in ACC play in 2024, they gave up 47% on twos. And in 2025, it was 56%, 17th of 18 with so many pieces back. And it just seems like the structure didn't work, or they got a little less committed on that end. It's rather confusing. You see a lot of variance in 3-point percentage defense year to year, but 2-point percentage you should be able to dictate, and Notre Dame was not able to do that last year, not able to control it from year to year. So heavy onus on Shrewsbury, the staff, and even the players to just renew the commitment and have it look a little more like 2024 on that end if they want to make it back to the big dance.
I know they had several injuries last year. I mean, Shrewsbury missed the final 7 games. Marcus Burton missed like 8 in the middle
Yep.
for something.
Alaco missed 8 at one
Mataloko
point.
missed a
Yep.
bunch. Yeah. So they had a lot of injuries and some weird lineup concerns. I'm seeing now they had 9 different starting lineups last year, which frankly does make sense for a team to give up that bad of a 2-point hit rate. But I mean, I think you've just got to find something, right? Like you don't necessarily have to have an amazing block percentage to have a good 2-point percentage. They are correlated somewhat, but we've seen some teams that don't have traditional rim protectors still have really good 2-point percentages allowed. I think Shrewsbury's got to find a way to lean into that.
Yep. To that point, the 2024 Notre Dame team, dead last in the ACC in block rate, 6.4%, but second in 2-point percentage defense. And some of that comes down to shot distribution. Can you force more mid-range than allowing them all the way to the rim? That is a big deal for that too. But it doesn't have to be shot blocking to be solid in the 2-point percentage. All right, number 10, Syracuse. Red Autry, just hit me. There's a couple different directions you could go with on this, Will. So where did you decide?
Unbelievably, despite us not comparing notes before this, I went with defensive 2-point percentage as well.
Right.
So in both seasons, my number is 53%. Both seasons under Red Autry, they've allowed a 53% hit rate or worse on twos. The two lowest 2-point or two worst, sorry, 2-point percentages allowed in program history. When they hold opponents below 53%, they're 21-11. The problem, of course, is that they've only done that 32 times, and they're 13-19 in the games where they don't do that.
53% is not a lot to ask.
No, that's 1.06 points per shot. That's really, not that hard to keep under. And the problem here is I don't understand who or what the rim protector would be on this roster. Like William Kyle is presumably the 5. I don't think of him much as a defensive piece. Donnie Freeman is not bad on that end, but I don't really want to rely on him to be the rim protector. The bench doesn't seem promising defensively. I actually think they're going to be able to score plenty this year. Like Nathan George is a pretty good point. Freeman, again, I like quite a bit. Nate Kings is a very good shooter and scorer in general. I don't think offense will be the problem. We're at this point again where I'm like, where is Syracuse getting stops? Which is a question we've asked for 5 straight seasons now.
Yeah, and they've like kind of had all right, I'm not going to be the 2-3 zone guy anymore, even though I'm taking over for Boeheim. They tried to play more man. It didn't work. Went back to more zone last year. Not all the time, but that still didn't work. And you mentioned William Kyle, a super incredible vertical athlete, like bouncy, gonna dunk a ton, has a high block rate, but I think he chases blocks quite a bit. There's a lot of that to him, and that's why his defensive rebounding rate isn't all that strong for a guy that was playing center for Mick Cronin, who desperately wants to finish possessions with rebounds. And I want to go back to the stat you cited with Clemson, the defensive possession length. They're bottom 10, I guess, in the country where they're allowing quick possessions both of the years under Red Autry, 6th last year, 7th the year before. A far cry from what Clemson is doing, where they make you work for every single possession. Against Syracuse, if you want a quick early look, you're probably going to find it. There's just not a lot of strong structure to this defense, and it looks sloppy when I see them on film, when I watched them last year. And I think that speaks to that you can get a good shot if you want early, and you don't have to work that hard for it.
And with Kyle in particular, so last year at UCLA, they allowed a 62.5% hit rate at the rim, blocked 11% of attempts. So Kyle blocked 10% when he was out there. Allowed a 69% hit rate at the rim. Not nice. So it really does play into what you're saying. He will chase blocks and he will get some, but it's at the expense of worse defense on the whole.
Yep. And UCLA is pretty well schooled in rotations if he is chasing. it just tells you that he's probably chasing at the wrong times and outside the framework of the defense. And that also would explain why a guy with a 9% block rate was playing like 10 minutes a game for Mick Cronin, who wants quality defense. All right, number 11, Virginia Tech. I went with turnover rate here, Will. Last year, they got really sloppy. It was 20%. Their league guards, Rex Steiner and Hammond, coughed it up constantly, and I think that really led to their downfall offensively. They had some quality shooting, and they still were bad offensively. Dead last in the ACC in turnover rate, 336 nationally, and now they're likely going to be handing the ball to a 6'8" Greek freshman-ish. I would call him a freshman, even though he's a little older and has some pro experience. Neo Avdalis, outstanding passer, but he's not been like a true point guard in the past. This summer for the U20 Greek Euros, he was their point guard. He averaged 8 assists and only 2.3 turnovers per game. I love that. That is a fantastic ratio. Tells you what he's capable of. And even watching it, it felt like they bricked a ton of opportunities. You could average close to 10 a game, 10 assists a game. And his team was good. They took 5th in that competition. So can he be the stabilizer in a Mike Young offense that typically runs good sets and gets quality shots, but they can't be turning it over? And that's Mike Young's had really good teams at taking care of the ball. Last year was a total drop off. They need to be able to repair that with a new point guard coming in if they want to be competitive.
350th in a non-steal turnover rate. So that means a lot of bad passes out of bounds, like just all sorts of unforced errors. So I agree. I think this year, I actually like the offensive fit quite a bit for them relative to their talent level. You've just got to have better all-around guard play to contend in this conference. And I can't give up on Mike Young. I've liked him for too long. I do think of him as a good coach, perhaps just in a overwhelming situation, but that's no excuse to have a turnover rate that poor.
Yep. Yeah, it's just so outside of the norm for him. The worst in his previous 5 years at Virginia Tech was 123rd, and to plummet to 336th was like, what is going on? A young team that, as you said, just was sloppy. It travels illegal screens from some of the big guys, like that kind of stuff that just takes you out of your offensive rhythm and gives the defense a chance. Not good. Need to erase that this year with Pasha coming in from Delaware, with Dallas as mentioned, and some of the bigs could stand to make better decisions with the ball. Toby Lawal had a high turnover rate as well. Number 12, Will, Pitt. I'm glad you ended up with Pitt. I didn't want to think about Pitt.
I don't really either, but 3-point percentage is my number for this, and it's for a strange reason. The members of this roster last year, I would like you to guess their combined 3-point percentage without looking.
Oh boy. I'll say 31.
That's spot on.
Wow.
That is a remarkable job.
All right, let's go. We love 31%. The numbers here at Stats by Will and Jim. We love them.
Yeah. So this is important because the last 3 Capel teams, 35% or better from 3, all of which were his 3 best offenses at Pitt. No ACC team that shot 32% or worse in conference play has cracked the top 50 in offensive efficiency in the nation in 6 years.
Wow.
That is a really bad sign when I'm already not like super high on your build, and I'm not really high on your defense either. They're going to be playing 2 non-shooting bigs together in all likelihood with Cameron Corrin and Deshaun Jackson. And the problem is none of the other bigs you can really play together like work at the 4 and 5. So they've kind of constricted themselves into a poor offensive build with a pass-first point guard and like 2 okay shooters at guard and wing. Brandon Cummings probably being the best of them. And at 37.7%, that's not like wildly convincing to anybody, I wouldn't say. There's like the chance that like DeMarco Minor could be a better shooter this year, but we'll see. This is another Torvik disagreement for me where he's actually got the offense ranked about 30 spots higher than in the defense. I would have it flipped. I'd have the defense a bit higher. I don't like this build much at all. If they shoot well, it will be a genuine overperformance, and that's a bad sign because in the Capel era, like the 3 best teams he's had by far have been the 3 good offenses. he still has not really managed to build a very good defense. Like his peak is 48th, and second best behind that is 70th his first season. And I don't think that this group is going to crack the top 50 because that defense was amazing at rim protection and defensive rebounding. I don't quite see the same upside here. So we've got to see them just pop out as shooters out of nowhere, basically.
Yeah, you mentioned Cummings shot a strong percentage, but it wasn't super high volume. And so,
No.
like, I'm not sold he's going to suddenly be taking 6 threes a game and staying at that 37%. With North Carolina's 3-point percentage, we mentioned their international addition, Luka Bogovac. Pitt's international addition is Roman Siolipa, who is an Australian rules football player or like a rugby guy. He is a giant, jacked, head down, bull in a china shop player who at FIBA U19 this summer went 1 for 9 from 3. So he only took 9
I was
threes
going
in
to ask
7
why he's
games.
not a punter. I thought that'd be an obvious punter spot.
Hey, get him out there. I mean, you remember Kelly Leopepe from Loyola Marymount? Like he of the great mullet.
Yes.
Siolipa kind of resembles him physically, but Leopepe could actually shoot threes a little bit. Siolipa does not want to because he can't. He only shot 65% from the free throw line, admittedly on very high volume in the FIBA U19, but he's not going to shoot threes. The spacing could be a total disaster for this team. It's minor.
I would remove could. I think it's going to be.
Okay. You know what? I'm being too
I
gentle.
think that this is a real contender for worst offense in this conference.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not like, as you mentioned, it's not like Capel has this track record of building great offenses out of nothing. He's had some good ones, but that was with a lot of shooting, with Blake Hinson spacing the floor and some other guys able to knock down shots. It doesn't feel like that exists here, and it could be a mess as a result. All right, next up, number 13, Wake Forest. How Steve Forbes has fallen a little bit here. My key stat here is an individual one as well, and is just the usage rate for Nate Kalmies at point guard. Because in the past, Forbes has done a great job of developing lead guards. I mean, the Alondas Williams, Tyree Appleby back-to-back was outstanding. Both those guys ended up with a 30% usage and ended up, in the ACC Player of the Year, right up there in the mix. I think one or both of them won it. I believe Alondas Williams won it. I don't think that would bode well for this season. Kalmies is not like a super high usage, let's run everything through me type of guy at Washington State. They did a great job of attacking mismatches and playing through some skilled bigs at times. It's not really Kalmies' strength to be the one operator in the offense. So you need Juke Harris, Cooper Schwieger in the paint, Mason and Colvin on the wings to take some of that burden from him. I think he can be a really effective player for Forbes. I just don't want him to be in that 30% usage range where no one else has stepped up and he has to be such a massive piece of the offense. I worry what happens to Wake if that's the case.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I actually do like the offensive build here on the whole. It makes a lot more sense than last year's. I hated the build coming into last season in the front court with Trayvon Spillers and Efton Reed together. And it became, progressively worse throughout the course of the season. This year, Schweiger can and will shoot threes, which I think is good. Offensively, like it does make sense. Juke Harris at wing, I like. Makai Mason is a good scorer. But yeah, I would like to see this be a more democratic side. And I know that's not really Forbes' strength. Even as an assistant, that was not really how he ran it when he was at Tennessee or even at ETSU in the past. But that's, to me, how you need to play. Because Kalmies is not your best player, I don't think. He's not he's not a guy that I want touching really even 25%. I think I would set the target about 22 I would be comfortable with. Yeah, it's an interesting team. I don't hate it. I also don't love it, and I'm getting concerned for Forbes' future.
Yep, unfortunately, it just hasn't quite been able to break through into the NCAA tournament. His best team by KenPom rank here was 2024, and that was more balanced. Like Boopie Miller was around 26% usage, Salas was 24%, Hildreth played better that year. They made more shots. I mean, the low-hanging fruit stat here would have been 3-point percentage because they were horrific at making shots last year. I do think that trends back up a little bit and was kind of an outlier. But man, I just want to make sure that they're getting contributions from more players offensively and not having to lean on one or two, because I don't think they have the talent in the top end of the roster to lean on one or two. All right, let's go west to the Pacific Coast arm of the ACC. Yes, the Pacific Coast of the Atlantic Coast. California, Will, who you hinted you might want to be a little higher end than other people.
So the reason for this, my number here is minus 6.1%. That is the 3-point percentage gap Cal had last year, second worst for any P5 team in America behind Miami, who was catastrophically bad defensively last year. Cal was at least pretty competent on the interior, right at 9th in 2-point percentage allowed, right in the mid-pack of the conference in pretty much every other stat. It was just that opponents got white hot against them from deep, especially in conference play where they allowed a 40% hit rate from deep. I don't think that that's going to happen a second time around. I like the offensive build of this roster a bit more. It makes more sense to me. I love Ritus for Tritus. I can't give up on that guy. Day-Day Ames makes sense to me too with this backcourt. Milos Ilic as the hub at the 5, I like too. And I just can't quit Mark Madsen. He was too good at Utah Valley. That final team especially was such a good overperformance side. I am in on this team in the sense that they're going to be more competitive than a lot of people think, because most ACC projections I've read seem to have them 16th or 17th. Seems like BC's the agreed upon 18th, but Cal's been in that bottom range. I don't think so. I think they're going to be a bit more competitive than people expect just by nature. I mean, if they had had even a 34% hit rate allowed last year from deep, they would have been top 100 in America. So they're not as bad as last year showed them to be. If they can just have a normal season from 33% allowed, which is about the national average, they're going to be more in business. They are 20-9 under Madsen when they win the 3-point percentage battle in a game. Just a little bit more luck in their favor would be nice.
I believe, if I'm doing the math right, that makes them 7-29 when they lose the 3-point percentage battle. Just looking
Yes.
at, so yeah, that tells you how extreme that can be. And sometimes when it rains, it pours. Last year, they were also dead last in the conference in free throw percentage allowed, which you really have very little control over unless you're like intentionally hack-a-shacking specific guys. So for that to be as low as it was, to go with the 3-point percentage defense, it just kind of felt like they had a poltergeist hanging above them all season, and it was bad shooting. So and maybe people are low on this team because they don't love like the transfer class. It doesn't stand out with like true stars. But to your point, I think it makes sense with a fit perspective. And Madsen's been such a good defensive coach over the years. If they actually get a little bit better fortune from 3, they could be a lot better.
Georgia Tech last year is a good example of this. So Cal lost that game 90-88. Georgia Tech dead last in the conference in free throw shooting percentage, 16th in effective field goal percentage, 55% from 3 against Cal in that game.
Yeah, what do? You just kind of have to shrug and say, oh, Duncan Powell and Nathan George are both shooting over 50% today. I guess we have to deal with that.
Yeah.
All right, next up is Florida State. Another one where I like the general thesis of the build of the roster. I don't know how the defense is going to look, and I don't know how high the talent level is. But that's why my key statistic here, and we've done it for a couple of teams, but it's 3-point percentage. I think they're going to take a ton of threes. Most lineups are going to have 4 guys on the court that can shoot. Every once in a while, if they play small ball with Wiggins and Jones in the front court, they'll be able to play 5 out. I don't have a key statistic for the defense because, like I said, I think it's going to struggle a bit. They don't have a ton of size, and their guards especially are smaller too. But if they're taking and making a bunch of threes on a given night, they're going to have some big upset wins at home that I think will rally the fan base and get them a little more excited than the stagnant sort of end of the Leonard Hamilton era had. And being able to fire away from deep just gives you a little higher variance. And this team, I think, has high variance this year because of the build of the roster.
And they were in conference play last or dead last in 3-point attempt rate 3 of the last 4 seasons. So I think this big switch up in play is going to get butts in seats first and foremost. But yeah, I think when you have a build like this where, let's be honest, the athleticism's not super high and the talent level isn't either, adding variance to the games is going to help. Like, you might get blown out. It is what it is. It's fine. But on certain nights, you might hit a lot of shots. You might be able to just math your way into a game against a Louisville or whoever.
Yeah, last year they were also fastest in tempo, which I wouldn't recommend when you're at a little bit of an athleticism and talent disadvantage. I think Laux, I know he's got the pro background. He might want to play in transition at times, but he should hopefully be smart enough to slow it down compared to what Hamilton would do when he had a deficiency in depth and a lack of shooting. This team can be a lot more lethal in the half court with the bombs away um, approach offensively.
And with the Kings, I know he may or may not have had much influence over this, but they were right at about the NBA average in pace the last 3 seasons with
Okay.
him as assistant. So I kind of wonder, like, we'll probably see a pace drop off this year anyway.
Yep, I would think that'd be smart for this roster in particular. All right, number 16, Stanford, staying west for you here, Will. What's the key factor for a roster that look, it's Kyle Smith and smoke and mirrors to me.
I would agree. So I'm not even going with like a real stat here. I am going with the fact that if you look at their schedule right now, there is one. I'm holding up my number, very visual podcast. One top 75 opponent on the non-conference schedule. Do you know who it is?
St. Mary's? I don't know. Are they playing somebody local?
UNLV, number 73.
Oh God.
Don't bother reading or looking into this team until January. And it's no offense to Stanford. They need wins. I get it. You got to excite the fan base somehow. But this is a team we are going to learn nothing about for 2 months. So I think I get it. I'm not going to be a hater of the schedule. They are also in a really strange position where people respect the coach a lot, but the team's not very good. But they're also Power 5, so you don't really want to invite them into your own building. It's not like a good loss either if you're a top 25 team bringing them in. Like, they have to play Minnesota on a neutral. They have to play at San Jose State, which is a really weird game to schedule. I think like pretty easily the toughest non-conference game is probably the Minnesota one. We just do not know and will not know much of anything about them until, frankly, January 2nd when they play Louisville at home.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was quite that extreme. There's been a bunch of ACC teams that have come out with schedules that you're like, why? Why is this what you're doing? I thought you cut down 2 ACC games so that you could play tougher schools in the non-conference, and instead multiple teams, Miami included, and certainly Stanford included here, have instead chosen to try to find a couple more wins on the schedule. And I get it with this roster, build confidence, figure out what lineup combinations make sense, because I just don't even know who the best 6 players are going to be on the roster. But it does look a little bit bleak for Stanford. They're also in that neutral site game with Minnesota. If they win or lose, they get St. Louis or Santa Clara, who are like, could be good, but again, not like super instructional on how great or bad this team's going to be in the ACC. It's just going to be Kyle Smith molding clay for 2 months.
Yeah, and it's like getting an exact estimate of non-conference schedule strength is a hair of a fool's errand at this time of year. But like, when you go by elite loss percentage at Torvik, which is just how many games would an elite opponent lose against the schedule, they rank 338th in schedule strength in the non-con. The problem with doing this is if you don't win, and then it's really disappointing. Like, I would argue if you lose more than 2 non-conference games, you're really behind the 8 ball heading into ACC play, which is not like always the best setup for you, I would say.
No, like if this team drops the Minnesota game you mentioned, UNLV
Like,
at
what
home,
if they lose at home to Seattle?
which is entirely possible. And yeah, you lose that second game to St. Louis or Santa Clara. You got Colorado on a neutral floor before Christmas. If that, you drop one to the dregs of the Big 12. This is the kind of stuff, we talk about the ACC's record against like Q1, Q2 games. It includes everybody. You need Stanford to not be totally embarrassing so that they're, traveling west to play Stanford in late February isn't immediately a Q3 game, but it's probably going to be because Stanford's unlikely to be in the top 75. So it's tough. It is tough for the ACC when you've got the bottom end and Stanford is a bottom team. All right, last 2 teams, Georgia Tech, Boston College. Georgia Tech will, I struggled with what to do here because I don't love the roster. I don't love the coach since Stoudemire's come back. I thought it was going to be much more competitive just because his Pacific teams in the WCC were like scrappy and they just made you earn it. And I haven't felt like Georgia Tech's done that. So I'm just going to go with the overall defensive rating here. Last year, they were 73rd, cracked top 75. They were a little bit feistier. They had some size in the paint. Dongo was really solid, and they got a little bit of contribution from a couple other bigs that are gone. Anuchek was gone. Suarez gone. The year before, they barely cracked the top 150. And with Stoudemire, that's the appeal. Like he had a top 100 defensive Pacific. He finished 107th defensively. I'm not going to say I can't see a Stoudemire team winning with offense. So for them to be competitive, they've got to get up to like the top 60 defensively. And I'm not sure the personnel is here to actually make that leap.
Yeah, I would agree in that I'm more, by a decent margin, more optimistic about the defense than the offense. I think this offensive build is frankly quite bad. But like the Dongo and even Peyton Marshall, who comes in from Mizzou, foul heavy human, atrocious on offense, but quite good as a rim protector, honestly. Like a pretty good defensive mind. Once he grows into his body and kind of figures things out, I think he'll be good. But when your entire upside is like, we have two really good front court defenders and question mark, I don't really look forward to watching you play. I don't really look forward to seeing your program. And as specified in the last podcast, the main image I have in my head when I think of you is that the SEC tournament was at your arena once, which is not really like what I what I want to think of when there is an actual home team there. So yeah, you hate to be too mean, but I'm just in my head. There's a couple of teams in this conference, one of which we're going to get to next, where I'm just counting down in my head until I get to see who the hot list is for this job.
Yep. Yeah. Maybe Stoudemire ends up getting 4 years or something. We'll see. You have a terrific article on the site about coaches in their 4th year and how important that is. So check that out, folks. A little plug. Always be plugging. But they've got Georgia Tech does have a really highly ranked freshman coming in, Mo Sila. And I'm just going to read the first sentence of his scouting report from 24/7 Sports. Will, it won't surprise you. Sila is a mobile and athletic big man with very high defensive upside. Okay, great. So
perfect.
That fits into the identity here. I think that's exactly what Georgia Tech needs to be. But if Sila's value offensively, as this report says, is rim runner, lob threat, you need spacing and passing to make that happen. And I don't love the outside of Cam Kraft just shooting anytime he touches the ball. It's not gonna happen for Georgia Tech. So I think it could be a little ugly. Could be a bad team, and that's why we have them ranked lowly. And we're not. They were on my non-league pass rankings last week because I don't want to watch a lot of Georgia Tech.
Yeah, and like to be honest, for what they spend on athletics, they deserve better. I know basketball is not a priority there, but you and I are both like football fans to some extent. Georgia Tech football has a very real shot at making the college football playoff this season. Like, this is not a program without money. So I think I wouldn't be shocked. And they've shown the ability to pull a pretty quick trigger in football before. I wouldn't be shocked if that extends to basketball if things go south this year. Like, if they are, the ACC's at 18 games this year, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, like, if they go 3-15 in ACC play, is that enough?
It probably is, I think. I mean, that's in this ACC too. That'd be really bad.
Like 5-13. That
I wonder
probably
if
brings
that's
them back.
Yeah, that's probably not quite bad enough. Which, and I'm sure Georgia Tech fans, if they're listening, it is football season for them. They're definitely locked in on that. So maybe they can't be bothered.
This team
yes,
rocks.
yes. Like I'm trying to find on Bartovic right now their projection in the league 7-11. So if they do underperform that by 4 games, I think you've got all you need to know about Stoudemire and whether he's going to work out here. I mean, he's lost some key pieces to intra-conference. Like Nathan George going to Syracuse is like a pretty big shot in the or a detractor for being able to retain players within even the same conference. And I think we'll see this year that the ceiling's also just not that high. So yeah, I'm out on Georgia Tech. We don't need to dwell on them any longer, Will. Let's dwell on Boston College instead.
Oh, I look forward to not thinking about this team very much. There's players on the roster. They will play basketball this year. All right. Next podcast is now. Can I read to you their non-conference schedule?
Oh no. Oh no.
I will preface it by saying in that elite loss number, it's 348th.
God.
All right. So I'm going to read it off to you. They have confusingly elected to start the year on the road at FAU.
Okay.
Home Citadel. Home Central Connecticut. That's a real upset territory for me. Road Temple. Home Hampton. Neutral Court Davidson. Home Harvard. Home LSU. Home New Haven. Neutral UMass. Home Fairleigh Dickinson. Home Lemoyne. Can you describe which of those games you'll be watching?
Oh boy. Maybe the final 5 minutes of Home Central Connecticut because it's upset watch, like you mentioned. Maybe the same with Home Harvard, but that's about it. I don't need to see them play newly in the MAC UMass. There's better opening night games than them going to FAU, and Temple's like almost as depressing to me as Boston College.
I think I'm going to be watching the stat broadcast of FAU just to see the final score. I don't think I will see an actual play of this team until, let's say, when they play Duke on February 3rd, I might tune in.
Okay.
That'll be interesting for somebody. No, my stat here is that they are just kind of boring. And this is somehow, let me make sure I've got this right. Year 5 for Earl Grant, which is sort of insane to think. It feels like it's been 10, but it is just year 5. So no top 100 defenses. A key reason for that. I'm going to hold up a number here. It's 4. Would you like to guess what that signifies?
Ooh, I don't have a guess.
The number of games in the last 2 years they've forced 15 or more turnovers.
Ugh.
That is the second fewest in America amongst P5 teams, behind Illinois, who plays super deep, and South Carolina, who's in a pretty similar boat. That is bad.
Yeah, they don't even play like extraordinary. Like they play slow-ish, but they're not like a bottom 10 pace team where you can't expect a raw number to be high. That's bad.
They don't really play the style of ball that like indicates a super, deep drop defensively either. Like it's a drop-ish, but it's not, it's not Creighton.
They should be dominating the defensive glass if you're playing that way, and they do not.
Yeah. No, they had a negative rebound margin last year. I had to really scrap and claw to figure out what my stat was here because we're kind of dancing around it. We think this team is really bad and is going to be looking for a new head coach. And I'm frankly shocked they didn't find a new head coach 5 months ago, 6 months ago. It was a stunner to me that they brought Earl Grant back. And he seems like a fine person. I don't hate him or anything. I will always treasure the fact that he brought Grant Riller to Charleston because I loved those teams. But he didn't make the tournament with them. And we're now in year 5 of a truly moribund tenure. And we are joking about which blowout we might catch a few minutes of.
Yeah, it's tough. You watch a game on TV and there's nobody there. Like the interest could not be lower in Boston College hoops at this point. And even going back to like the success he had at College of Charleston, it was nowhere like outside the normal realm of Charleston success. Like he had one team crack the top 100. Pat Kelsey had 2 in the top 101. Even Bobby Cremins was way better before. And I'm sure Chris Mack's going to have a big season this year. It's a high resource job in a league without a ton of resources. His last year at Charleston, he finished outside the top 200 in KenPom. Like it's just, you got to go in a different direction. I know it's hard to lure coaches here because it's a really resource poor job relative to the conference rivals. But man, I just feel like a refresh, a restart is necessary. I don't know who the name's going to be, but find somebody to gamble on, a young up and comer that wants to tackle this job, because unfortunately it seems like it's run its course right now.
And honestly, like, I'm aware the resources there are not great, but if you look at pure expenses on their basketball program in the most recent fiscal reporting year that's available, which is 2023, they spend as much on their program as Mississippi State and West Virginia does.
Oof.
I mean, they spend more than FSU. They spend as much as like Stanford or LSU, or I mean, like, these are not amazing programs by any stretch, but they are relatively competent. Like, they make decent. LSU's made a damn Sweet 16 in the last 6 years. Radiohead had not put out In Rainbows when Georgia Tech was Boston College last finished top 50. 18 damn years ago.
It's wild.
Yeah, I mean, like, and I'm well aware that they don't spend as much as most in the ACC. That's fine. You can still find a way. Like, they spend exactly as much in their program in this most recent reporting year as Mississippi State. Mississippi State has found a way.
Yep, and it just hasn't been the case here. All right, should we finish beating this poor dead horse? We apologize, Boston College fans.
I don't.
Hey, okay.
Find something. Do something. Stop getting mad at Kevin Sweeney when he ranks your team 18th in the conference.
Why would you get mad about that? I don't know. You're up if the upside
I think
is
people just like being mad these days.
Yeah. What can you name the last time BC went over 500 in conference play?
I'm trying to guess who the president would have been. It would have been Obama for sure. I'm just trying to figure out if it was first or second term, and I'm going to guess like early second term.
It was 2011, which
oh Jesus,
I believe is first term. Yeah.
I would have been. So I would not have even been in college yet.
No. Yeah.
I would have been the next semester.
Okay. I was in college, but it's make me feel old, Will. How dare you?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah, it's been bad. I mean, there were a couple hype Jim Christian teams, and they never even got within, like, 7-11 was his best record. Earl Grant going 9-11 is like a huge accomplishment.
At least the Steve Donahue, they were bad. Let's not get that wrong. The Steve Donahue teams were fun because they scored and they gave up a lot of points.
Yes. That's not the case anymore, unfortunately. All right, that's it. That wraps up our ACC pod. That's the preview. We're going team by team, conference by conference. We'll come back with another league next week where we'll have the pivotal number for each team and discuss in detail. That's the plan for our preview season. Hopefully differentiates enough from the Basket Under Review pod here under the Basket Under Review umbrella. Thank you to Trilly. Thank you to Corey behind the scenes for helping us with the editing. Thank you to listeners for tuning in. We appreciate you. Shout out to Homefield, the sponsor. Remember promo code Burner15. But we'll be back next week with another preview. We'll see you then, and thanks for tuning in.